before I get into this module repair, I just want to go over a couple things real quick about how this module ended up with me to fix it. So a friend of mine actually diagnosed this. A friend of mine named Tim diagnosed a 96 T100. I think it was a 95, 96 T100 with a stalling condition. Now, I have some wiring diagrams up from MotoLogic to share to explain what took place and how he diagnosed this. What he was able to find was the IGF circuit was actually shorting out internally inside of the ECM, causing the engine to stall. Now, how this works, if you have not watched my Toyota ignition systems video, is the IGF circuit is a confirmation signal sent back to the ECM in order for the ECM to know that ignition took place. Now, if the ECM does not see that confirmation signal, it will shut off the fuel injectors to protect the catalytic converter. Now, how this circuit works, if you can follow my mouse, is the ECM sends 5 volts through a resistor. Now, anything on the outside of the ECM is the ground side of this circuit. So, if you have an open on the ground side of your circuit, the ECM will actually look at 5 volts, right? If you have an open in your ground, you're going to have the voltage that you essentially started with. And once that path to ground closes, the voltage on the ground side of your circuit will go to near zero volts. So the ECM is just watching this 0 to 5 volt square wave as the igniter is opening and closing that path to ground on that IGF circuit. The problem is, if you have an open circuit that never gets pulled to ground, or if you have a shorted circuit that keeps IGF at ground, the ECM just does not know if ignition is taking place. And again, to protect the catalytic converter, it's going to shut off the fuel injectors. When you shut off the fuel injectors, the vehicle stalls. Now, what was taking place was this IGF circuit was shorted to another circuit. So inside of the ECM, the IGF circuit was shorted to the idle signal circuit. Now, when you first started this car, the engine is going to be slightly above idle, right? Get the vehicle up to temperature. But as soon as this truck would come down to temperature, this circuit inside of the throttle position sensor would close when the vehicle reached idle. That sends a signal back to the ECM. The problem is that also closed the path to ground for IGF to get shorted to ground because IGF was shorted to IDL, if that makes sense. So here's the waveforms that Tim sent me. So in this waveform, you have the crank sensor, the cam sensor, IGT. Now IGT is the signal circuit from the ECM telling the igniter to fire the spark plug. You also have IGF. Now, just based on the amplitude of the crank sensor, you can see where the amplitude starts to decrease and the vehicle starts to stall. You can also see that is shortly after IGF gets shorted to ground. Now, you can also see that IGT continues to fire the spark plugs even though it's not getting an IGF circuit. Now, Tim was able to check the fuel injectors to see that the fuel injectors were getting shut off, causing the stall. But the fuel injectors were getting shut off because the ECM was unaware of if ignition was occurring and wanted to protect the catalytic converter. So just wanted to share this waveform, and I also have a picture that I'll post right now of the original corrosion before I started repairing this. All of this black stuff is from a leaking capacitor right next to it. Now, what ended up happening is there's 2 circuits that got shorted together. Now, here are the circuits after I started cleaning this up. Before I made this video, I wanted to clean this board up just to make sure I was even able to save it. So, right, let's see if you can see this. So right here, this here is our IGF circuit, and this circuit right next to it was shorted together. Now, the nice thing about these old Toyota circuit boards is, let's follow this out. They actually had the pins marked. So you had the ACV circuit, the HT1, in the IGF circuit. Now, if you follow the IGF circuit, it actually goes around this pin. So you can follow it back. You can't see it, it gets stuck. Actually, you can see it here. Follow it across, all the way across to this pin right here. Alright? So if you flip this board over, I actually already did this. So when you flip this board over, it comes through to right. So when you flip this board over, it comes through right to this pin. Now, if we follow this pin down and across, it's going to be this thicker one. It's going to go underneath this resistor, coming across here to this hole now instead. Alright? So now we have to flip this board back over to see where it goes from here. Flip the board over again. You can see that this circuit is where it comes through. So my IGF, we're going to cross the board. It's coming back through. We can follow this trace. You can see right here is actually where the damage was. So we are able to verify that our IGF circuit actually does cross over where that damage occurred. So this capacitor was leaking. And this capacitor I'm going to replace as well, just to be safe. So I also need to clean up this circuit a little more. I'm going to fill this with solder. I don't see too much damage to it, but there's a couple areas you can see, like right in here where there might be a small break. So I'm just going to fill all that in with solder, put some solder mask over top of it, and get this fixed up for the customer. Now, if you've never removed a capacitor, capacitors, they don't like heat. They don't like excessive heat. They can actually explode on you. So what I'm actually going to do is end up cutting these legs off. But one of the most important things to pay attention to is the negative side of a capacitor. So you can see this negative sign here and here. All right, so that's the negative side of the capacitor, just so we know which way to face these capacitors when we are installing them. Alright, so the way I'm going to remove these, actually, with this, I'm just going to cut the legs right off. You can actually see it leaking. I flipped it over just to get a good picture of it. You can actually see it leaking in here. So all of that is going to need cleaned off, but I'm going to cut this big capacitor off as well. Alright, set those aside. I'm going to clean these circuits up right here and see if we can get this fixed up. See how clean we can get this without too much work. Not too bad, actually. This cleans up fairly easy. Alright, now we have to get those legs, get those holes emptied out. So I'm going to fire up my soldering iron and get these taken care of. Alright, so just to get you up to speed, I had to flip this over. I was having trouble getting these holes clean. So I'm adding low melt solder to the back side where the legs came through the board. Gonna clean that up now. There we go. Pulling out the sucker. So I'm going to use this to clean these the rest of the way. Nope, didn't get that one. Yeah. All right. This one I cannot get clean. Let me switch hands. Nope. There we go. All four clean. Let's just clean this up with some copper wick. Alright, so we now have our capacitors removed. I'm going to install some new capacitors. So the small one, a lot of people asked me in a few videos where I get circuit board components from. And the answer is, for the most part, I get them from Mauser. Now Mauser, they have some professional quality components, so it's who I use. So this one is 33 microfarads for 35 volts, which is what our old one was. Again, making sure we line up our stripe. Our stripe is going to be our negative. We're going to slide that right in. Going to bend the legs back to hold it. And our second one, the bigger one, forget what size that was. Let me open this package and find out. The second one was 47 microfarads at 63 volts. Again, making sure we line up our negative leg, negative side of the circuit. Bend our legs over so that we can solder them in place. Cut these legs off. Now, one last time I'm going to go over these now that the legs aren't in the way. There we go. Now we're looking a little better. Those joints were looking like crap. Alright, there's two. Let's clean these two up. And last one, right here. Alright. This whole board has been kicking my butt. But not bad, not bad. Now, the last thing we need to do is we need to run some solder over top of this these traces that are damaged, and once we run solder over them, I'm going to cover it with solder mask to protect them. Gonna add some flux. Clean this up. The big thing we want to make sure of is that these two circuits aren't shorted together. So in order to protect these traces, I am using some solder mask. Now this here is kind of like a glue. Just going to smear it on to these traces and use a UV light to cure it. Got my UV light. Just realized that I missed a spot up in here. Alright, well, I'm going to send this one back to Tim. We're going to see if this thing is fixed or not. Now, I don't know if you guys like these type of videos, these module repair videos. If so, let me know. Leave a comment below. I also have a Prius combination meter that I need to fix as well. That's for a relative, so if you like these videos, leave a comment below, and I'll continue making them. It's kind of nice to hang out. I'm in my house, in my office, my whole my setup, practicing module repairs, learning as I go, and trying to share the little bit I know with you all. So hope you enjoy.